ish.
Yeah, it seems like it recorded and then is uploading the lives.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not really sure.
And I'm not sure if people can hear us.
Well, it doesn't matter if people can hear us. There's nobody there. And the point of this was not to have people watching, but to be able to record us talking about what we want to do for this month.
Mm-hmm.
Without the stress of having a camera watching us.
Yeah, but that looks pretty good. Even on the laptop cam.
Mm-hmm. You got Diego.
Got Diego.
Why are you doing that? Don't show my butt. Move it back where it was. Just because you don't want to see your gut doesn't mean you got to focus on mine. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, how's that? I have no idea if people can hear a word we're saying.
It looks like the microphone's picking up. So,
okay.
Oh,
that's good.
But
we're able to brainstorm.
Right.
Live.
You brainstorm live, and what it does is that it keeps the recording. And my hope is that we get a couple of tidbits, and then we can actually pull from this live as like a snippet for a video throughout the month.
Yeah, I like that idea. Maybe do it.
Yeah, that way we can, if we sit and talk for 45 minutes, whatever we're talking about, we can say, oh, remember this, versus when we would sit here brainstorming ideas, and we'd come up with our best ideas, and then we go, crap, we didn't record any of that, and now we sound good. Jilted and stiff, and we're trying to remember whatever line we wrote down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we have nobody watching.
Exactly.
And so
it's like our usual YouTube channel.
It is. I love it.
But and I think some of the conversations we talked about was dealing with the ideas of a empty nest, how we're functioning or not functioning.
Well, yeah, it's a mixed bag,
Yeah.
Because it's like we're very proud of the boys going off to school, and then also coming to terms with the reality of it's a good thing we like each other.
I don't know about that. That's another part of
that's
what
a different
we got to talk about.
That's a different video.
But I think even, and here's Fenway.
Hey, I know it's a rainy day here.
Mm-hmm. So we got Diego, we got Fenway,
and
our antisocial Anastasia.
All gathered around for the video.
Yep.
Yeah, you're on video.
Yeah.
Or at least we think.
Well, we're recording. It's just the goal is to just keep it.
Yeah. There you go.
But
and maybe this is a niche.
Yeah.
Dog being pet on YouTube.
Yeah, I think so.
Live.
Mm-hmm. But yeah.
Yeah. So the kind of direction of our videos is something we've been talking about, and the idea of becoming empty nesters, and
leaning into dreams that we want to pursue, how to navigate those ups and downs and anxieties that come along with it. And, I feel, I feel like in the last week I've been really overwhelmed with all the details of sending Ezra and Jacob off to school. Ezra's going to University of Limerick, so it's the process of like not only sending them off to school, but sending them several thousand miles away.
Yeah, well, and there's just, at least this first year, there's just so much to kind of wrap your head around in terms of the process.
Is everything going to be okay?
Everything is going to be okay. And then it's also, it happened so quickly where he went to the college fair, the Irish college fair, and then he's like, wow, this is pretty cool. I'm going to apply to a couple of them and then get accepted. And then being like, you actually want to do this, and we want to help you do it.
Yeah. And, Jacob making the decision to not just commute to school, but to like go and live at the dorms and know that, for me, I think it's, it's going through a lot of like stress and panic in terms of like, did I teach them enough to prepare for that? I don't want to be one of those stereotypes where, the kid calls me up and asks me how to make a grilled cheese or how to like tie their shoes or, open their mailbox,
I think you've done a fine job. They know how to.
I know, but I think that's the hard part about being a mom is that, the criticism or the critical eye is always kind of lean towards moms, no matter what age your kids are. It's.
Well, I think as parents too, you feel there's like your kids are a reflection of you. That's in some ways, even if that's not, especially as they're an adult, not truly accurate. But I think they're gonna have to find their way through some situations that'll be new for each of them in their own ways. But I think in terms of day-to-day stuff, it's funny too, because they've kind of, we see them all the time in how they are around the house, and they certainly can make themselves basic dinners, and they have their certain kind of ways they like things, and I think that's going to translate to their new circumstances too.
Yeah. And and I think that that's kind of also your style, is that you like to just be very relaxed about what's going to happen, that everything's going to work out. And I know logically that is true, but I think like for me with my mom brain, it doesn't ever compute. Like I feel like I'm safest when I'm being hyper vigilant and hyper planning and worrying about them, and I think for our communication, like learning how to deal with this next stage is like also learning how to communicate that that's what I'm feeling, even though I'm like super anxious and overwhelmed, and I know I haven't done a very good job over the last couple of days of being able to do that and communicate it calmly. And even you saying everything right now of like everything's going to be okay is kind of like spiking a little bit of rage in me right now, even still, because I feel like it's like wanting to feel heard and not over explained and allowing myself to just feel those feelings, whereas you're always working towards like soothing those feelings.
Yeah. Well, and I think my approach to it goes all the way back to, listening to Tony Robbins and him talking about the anxieties and the things that we project, the fears we project, and the acronym so many years ago that he implanted in my head through reading his books and listening to him was, fear is false expectations that appear real. And it's like, do I believe everything will be perfect and the boys won't have bumps in the road? No, but I can't anticipate which ones they'll have. And because I know what a good job you and we have done raising them, I don't have a lot of, like, in my own head, a lot of stress about them being able to kind of work their way through.
Mm-hmm.
But I certainly understand and appreciate, especially from other things we've talked about over the years, where that line of, oh, everything will be all right, in the context in which we've talked about it, isn't always, we know life isn't always okay, and that bad things do happen, and there are things to worry about. But so I understand that spike of rage coming up.
I think it's like ingrained in mothers to be the ones that do worry, like it's a sign that we care as moms, versus dads are expected to lead fearlessly and be the calm in the storm, and I think it's like the difference between the roles. And you stating like, oh, don't worry about it, devalues what I feel like I bring to the table, even though it's not glamorous to say, oh, I bring to the table worry and anxiety, as like a strong value. But I think for women, it's, part of our own evolution is that, we're supposed to be the survivors. We're supposed to be the ones that like keep everybody alive, and and I think men tend to have more of a belief system of like, well, I have to provide and I have to stay calm, and but you don't necessarily have to be here for that, like,
yeah, I mean,
men have always been the ones that leave the house, and women are the ones that stay in the house.
Well, and those are the cultural kind of stereotypes, but we know that's not the ideal.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying who I am as a person, who you are as a person.
Mm-hmm.
Your driving force comes from who you were and what generations before you showed you as being a good dad or good husband or good partner, comes with not worrying, showing like you've got it steady. I mean, that's not just a stereotypical, that's how we function, and there's thousands of YouTube videos about why men die before women, because they're always doing something stupid, and it's hard to be that boy mom. It's hard to say, okay, I trust everything's going to be okay
Mhm.
when all three of you are like, chill out, don't worry about it. And that's the point, is to worry about it.
Mhm.
Is your battery dying?
Energy saver is on.
You want me to grab your
Oh yeah.
cord?
In the meantime,
You're going to go back to your radio voice.
I'll go back to my radio voice and dog petting live on YouTube. I think it's the bottom one.
I know. I've lived in this house just as long as you.
Mm-hmm.
This is the one
Yeah,
here.
right next to it. Perfect.
But, that's the point of this, is to like go through the ideas of like what the conversation is and to allow the conversation to flow rather than to get disrupted,
Mm-hmm.
And the goal here is not to sit and fix each other. It's
Right.
the goal is to look at each other's perspectives, and that,
Yeah. And to kind of talk through what's actually going on and what we're feeling about this chapter in our life.
and I think
And then, how do we channel, no pun intended, how do we channel kind of that into the channel and the videos that we're creating,
right.
and what would help people kind of who may be going through the same thing that we're going through and feeling some of the same things that we're feeling at this
And
time.
the rage that happens when you love somebody. Like I think that's the thing. It's like this is the challenging parts between two people, the different roles. You've always talked in terms of your role that you believe that you have to maintain a certain presence, a certain persona.
Mm-hmm.
And
YouTube Live.
Yeah. Any second now, there's going to be a butthole. There we go. There we go. Yeah. Come on. Come here. Come here. Come here. Come sit.
Getting real with Dream with us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, if any of the people who are watching and going through this and have gone through it, we'd love to hear from you and learn your perspective on how you navigated some of this stuff.
Yeah. But I think that's not really the role here. Like, people want to be able to look to us and say, okay, this is how you're navigating it.
Mm-hmm.
If we're not creating a search bar, we're not saying, okay, like let's create videos so somebody can give us information. The goal here is to show that two people can dream about their lives, communicate clearly what they want, not dismiss each other, not and know that sometimes happens,
Mhm.
and just to kind of lean into possibilities and learn from it.
Yeah.
And I think um, it's important to show that two people can communicate their feelings and their ideas, and that sometimes you naturally uh, don't get it right.
Right. Yeah, and that's part of it too. Is that you are two people. You have each of us have different backgrounds and experiences, and whenever you're in a relationship, you're navigating two perspectives on those things, and certainly this week with the college stuff, but I think we made good headway
Yeah, I
this
mean,
week.
I think that's the hard part about when you're dealing with anxiety or stress. One, you have to unpack it all. You have to figure out where it's coming from. You can't just slap a Band-Aid on it. Oftentimes, that's what we do. You slap a Band-Aid on it and you hope for the best, but eventually it pops back up. I know that that's a big problem for me, is that I have to look at what areas in my life that I've wanted to pursue but couldn't because of my own insecurities, my own anxiety, my own stress, my own limiting thoughts of what I believe was what I was supposed to do. Like for me, it was like money was a major factor of whether or not I left the house. And growing up, my mom very clearly, she worked mostly from home, and she made it very clear that her job or her role as mom was to just be home.
Mm.
And if she was to leave the house, she had to make X amount of dollars, but she didn't leave the house for pleasure or fun. And that's like learning how to lean into networking, or learning how to develop a business, or do anything that at first doesn't make any money.
Right, and it's like that understanding that you have to. It's putting yourself in a vulnerable position, putting yourself out there to start a business or whatever it is you're taking a chance on, and then it's also that kind of showing up every day and having that purpose and that reason behind it, and overcoming kind of those voices in our heads that kind of tells us,
oh, he's back.
He's back. We're live on YouTube.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
So you have some ideas that you want to.
I went
Chat
through
about.
most of them that we were chatted about,
Mm-hmm.
and and because like I think it's always for me. It's always been really hard, because my value was really like tied into being a mom, being, um, and even as a kid, I saw that as something that was important, and
Well, it is. Right? It's like one of the most important jobs, but
yeah, but
the
it's not. It's putting all your energy into other people in
Right.
hopes that they go off and do something,
Right.
but
And
it's very limiting on how much you can do.
Yeah.
And
yeah, and you want to be able to. I mean, that is kind of the societal trap when you're a mom. Sometimes is that you get pigeonholed into these roles, and so you also have the societal expectations on the roles, and then am I letting my own pursuit of things that will fulfill me take precedent over that, and will I be judged for that, and all that other stuff too.
well, it's even like not even allowing yourself to lean into what would fulfill me, because that's considered selfish and wrong.
Mm,
Like I wasn't raised in a space that ever gave permission to do that. My mom was incredibly talented as an artist, but she couldn't pursue that as a job. She couldn't pursue that as like her
yeah,
ambition.
right.
And
Well, she didn't see it as a possibility for herself.
but she didn't have any examples of it.
Right. Yeah.
Like it was.
And I think that's kind of going back a little bit to where we are with the boys too. It's like we want them to be able to see the possibilities and have the opportunities where we didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's also kind of connecting back to, okay, well, what about our own possibilities?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing is like we lived in very different spaces. Like you like to say that you come from like a nice like working class family, which you did, but it was not limited in the same way that was limited on my end. Like I have, a dad who was severely dyslexic and never pursued a single like promotion, even though he was very charismatic and very capable,
Very intelligent.
and incredibly intelligent. But because he was told out throughout his whole life that that he he was a bum and that he couldn't do anything and that he should be ashamed of everything that he's ever gone through, and that filtered over onto me. And the same with my mom. It was very much like she was raised by very old school kind of thinking mom herself, where it's like you can be a secretary, nurse, or teacher as a woman, and and for her to pursue a bachelor's in fine arts, she didn't have any navigation plan on how to make that happen.
Right. What are you
than
going to do with that?
right,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I think for me growing up, it was just like, oh, you're going to go work on the railroad or you're going to work in real estate. Like there was only two options because that's what my mom did and that's what my dad did, And what's up?
Hey.
Oh, you're not on video.
Well, we are on
We're
video,
on-
but
we're live on
it's
video.
not like there's anybody watching.
Oh, okay.
We're just recording so we can remember what we said.
Okay.
But, if we do get anyone, Fenway will most likely be the star.
Mm-hmm. The English setter.
But
So, how do you work through those kind of ways of seeing the world and
uh-huh.
yeah, this is not going to work out.
Yes, it will. You can jump up. Come on.
He's a little confused. Mhm. But how do you kind of move past those, because you recognize those differences and limitations that were kind of embedded or in place or whatever.
I haven't figured that out yet.
Mm.
Like, I think part of that comes from watching you and your family, watching your sister being a driving force and determination, talking to your Aunt Betty, talking to your mom
Mm-hmm.
when she was around. Like, it was, all of them were career driven women who were willing to pursue that,
Mm-hmm.
and
Well, and I think they all in their own ways are strong personalities, and I don't think they all of the women in my family that you mentioned, yes, they forged a path for themselves, but it wasn't a straight path. And in many ways, my mom's path, she had ambition and she, wanted us to kind of go beyond what we already knew, and she wanted us to get a college education. But, the reality is her path, as strong as she was, didn't come together until her mid 40s or so. And, I think me and my sister and my aunt, who you mentioned, same thing. I mean, they had careers and they found their stride. But I see that same strength in you too. It's like you are a, driven, creative, kind of strong woman who is also now, where are you going? Also,
very heavy cat.
in that mode of, okay, well, what's next?
Well, it's been really hard for me because I think for me, it's, I don't have, I do have a lot of that ambition, but I don't know how to sustain it, and I don't know how to make it happen, because I go in stops and spurts, and I recognize, like, I have to learn how to find consistency, and to break it down into smaller chunks.
Yeah.
Which, you heading out?
Yeah.
Have fun.
Yeah. I don't know the best idea to drive in the sore weather, but I'm doing it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not that bad. Just take your time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have a good time.
I'll try.
Okay.
Love you too.
Love you. But no, I mean, I think for me, it's always been really difficult. I mean, I think you have to like recognize like the difference in like where I came from and
Love you
where
too.
love you guys.
Love you.
Where like you come from is like if you I think you feel comfortable in my family settings. I feel like you see it as kind of like a relaxed space because everyone's very like quiet in comparison to your side of the family, and you're a pretty quiet person.
Mm-hmm.
So you fit in more, but I think like you have to like see that you know
The dynamic.
the
is
dynamic is very different.
Mhm.
And of course your sister is going to be more prone to being assertive and no bullshit, because she came from that, and she's able to do that in her career as well. She's very assertive in taking care of her
Mhm.
in her role.
Yep.
And whereas my mother and my dad never pursued promotions. They never pursued getting out of their comfort zone when it came to their career. It was
Mhm.
just you make enough money to pay for your house, pay for your life, and that's it. And my mom was terrified of public speaking, and she's never been able to even come to a single poetry reading of mine because she's gets so anxious and terrified, and even like the thought of me doing it is scary.
Mm.
Um,
But does that come from like kind of the same place where you worry about the boys, and as a mom, and you know what I'm saying? Like, are they going to be okay going into their next chapter, and you get nervous for them for the situations they're going to be in? Do you think it's a similar kind of experience?
um, I don't think so, because I think I get my like I feel like um, I think part of it is it's my own ego, as a mom, of wanting to make sure that because in reality I did invest all my time and energy when they were young in taking care of them, giving them the skills and the tools
Mm-hmm.
that you know them going out into the real world is a reflection of me. It's a reflection of my abilities, that I did a good job. It's like being a manager of a company and your employees do good, then you have done good.
Mm.
And whereas um, I think my um, I've never quite understood my mom's fear of public speaking, because she's a very easygoing person to talk to people,
Mm.
but she really struggles with like having to speak to more than one person at a time.
Yeah. I mean,
But there was a lot of women in my family that were like that, like, and really struggled with even having luncheons with more than two people.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah, I mean, some people do have so it means not just public speaking anxiety, but social anxiety
Yeah.
outside of a few people you're comfortable with. And that's part too, like, I mean, me as well as anybody. And, when we're in a social situation when there are a lot of people, I'm usually not that outgoing. I'm usually my mellow Joe self. Whereas if we're in a family situation, even though I'm still kind of on a quiet side, I'm much more animated with the people I know.
I think you're more animated with kids. I don't think you're
Oh.
very animated with adults in family situations.
Maybe. I mean, I definitely, I
You enjoy children.
I enjoy kids. They're just like they want to just be happy and
Yeah.
be Uncle Joey or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I prefer to be the aunt that just treats any child at whatever age as an adult and be the cool aunt.
You're definitely the cool aunt.
Yeah. But I mean, I think I think a lot of women view staying quiet as a form of safety. I think a lot of women worry about having their words turned against them or having their information not like completely understood.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, and it is. It's, on so many levels, kind of the vulnerability of, opening yourself up and people violating that trust or and it can come from sometimes the people you least expect.
Yeah. But I think like for me, because I feel like I've always been a lot more like my dad versus my mom. And, my dad, being dyslexic and also then also struggling with addiction and then going through the arc of like learning how to read later in life, learning, what he needed to do to get sober. Also like understanding that was part of the journey. I remember having one time that I was reading a poem and there was and part about him and my life growing up and dealing with somebody who was struggling with addiction. And, my mom had told me like, oh, you shouldn't read that poem anymore because your dad's going to be there, and was scared of me like saying anything. But instead I decided to do it anyways. And afterwards I was like, oh, I hope this didn't insult you. I hope this didn't upset you. And he was like, no, this was like an AA meeting. That's the point of it. Like you learn from each other's mistakes. You learn from those authentic stories. And when we are brave enough to share those stories, then you can actually like grow from that.
Yeah, and that was always something, because I was there when, you read that particular poem and your dad was there, and it shows kind of not only his love for you, but his growth as a person and his ability to enjoy that moment, accept that moment, and hear the words and still embrace, right, and not push away.
Yeah.
And that's, and that takes a lot of courage, and acceptance and all of those things that, he worked on his end.
Yeah. And, everything that we've kind of like discussed and thought about with this channel and, thinking about what that next chapter looks like, thinking about where we want to be, what we want to do, is completely out of our comfort zone, and, and, I think for me, like it's part of my journey of like having to address those fears head on,
Mhm.
you know, and that it's messy and it's, you know, not easy to navigate. And, you know, I'm a big emotion person. I get upset, I get loud, and, you know, I struggle when I have people tell me to like tamp it down or to calm down because I feel like I've kept my like, even though you all may not think that way, but I feel like I've kept myself under control and calm for such a long period of time as being a mom and taking care of everybody
Mhm.
and trying to get to this point where we're trying to figure out the finances to how to pay for it. And, you know,
Well, and it's also, well, two things. I think one is I was listening to one of our um, one of the channels that at least inspired me, and I think you too, is the on the retirees. And I was listening to them earlier today, and they're celebrating their 1 year YouTube anniversary. And she was describing how um, she was not gung ho for it because she's a very private person and didn't want to expose herself to social media. In fact, you know, it's like,
and she's like, you.
well, that's why I was saying it was resonating with me to hear her go through that process because she expressed that she was like kind of got over that piece, or at least worked through it. And I think that is like me. I mean, we've had this conversation. Obviously, it's like even 6 months ago, having this conversation live on YouTube, I would not be comfortable with. But I think
With no one watching.
with no one watching, but you never know. Somebody could be watching.
No, it says it right there. Oh, there's one person watching. We just said it. Ah, look at that.
Yeah.
It's probably
So-
Ezra.
So yeah, it's like, you know, even kind of opening up and talking about these issues, and I think, you know, I tend to
Yeah,
be
they went away. See, it's all better now.
nothing, not doing anything exciting. Or we call that Ezra. He's like, oh no. But yeah, I think, you know, it is. It's like it is part of that next chapter, and one of the things, you know, I think one of the reasons you wanted to start the channel um, was so that we had something to work on together, particularly after we retire at some point. And I think, you know, for me, that is an exciting piece. Like you know, we don't know where it's going to go. We don't know where it's going to head. We're kind of working through that now, like through this discussion and planning session.
Yeah.
And
Well, I think that's part of it. Is like if we're at the beginning of May and, you know, if making sure there's like, because I struggle with consistency and I struggle with maintaining the same overall goal without veering off in a million different areas, you know. And so,
yeah. So that's the other goal, is consistency.
consistency and validating that it's worth being consistent, you know, like I think, you know, last year I got a little bit more consistent with going to the gym. This year I got even more consistent with actually maintaining going to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And, it took me 3 months to be able to walk into a gym confidently without looking at the mirrors and like wanting to like gasp and run away, and I think that I have to recognize that that's also the part that, as much as I want to pursue this, as much as I want to lean into my goals, I am really struggling with the kind of shame and anxiety and fear that's connected to it, and whereas you outwardly are a little bit more reserved, it looks more like, okay, I don't really want to be doing this. I don't want to do that. Whereas like I will outwardly look like I'm excited to be on this, but it's the after effect. It's the day after. It's the like coming down off of it, of going, oh my God, I can't believe I said that. I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I acted that way. And I go through like all the reasons why I shouldn't do it, because I'm all the negative things that go through my head,
Come up. Yeah.
And I'm, and I think because also like even though my mom was incredibly talented, she was very good at deflecting that pain to transfer it of like saying that she didn't want to do something or didn't want to deal with it. And so not really getting to the root cause of why she didn't want to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I had learned that as well. Like, it's just like, don't really express or say what I'm really struggling with,
Well, and sometimes it's finding words or wrapping your, like, I mean, how I am with a lot of this stuff. I may be feeling something, but I might not know how to process it or express it or where it's coming from sometimes. And, maybe it's the same kind of what you're describing is like, stuff comes up, but it's also, okay, well, where's it coming from and why? Because it's not necessarily, I mean, it may be, but it might not be all the same thing, right? And different things kind of set you off into set people, not just you, but,
Yeah. I think for me, it's like, I do know exactly why I don't like what's fueling it, but I know how to like get out of it, like I can say X, Y, and Z to you, and you're like, okay, that's stressing you out. It's all right. You don't have to do this. It's all right. We don't have to make a video this week, and whereas like, I know that, okay, I'll just say this and then I don't have to do it or I'll just like get upset and overwhelmed by all this other stuff when, you're trying to say, oh, it's really not that big of a deal. We're going to figure it all out. And I'm like, no, we need to figure this out now so I don't have to do a video. Don't have to like pursue my dreams. I don't have to pursue my goals. And so I'm going to use this avoidant like tactic with you to get out of doing it and claim I have to do all this other stuff. Whereas like with you, it's like you're like, I don't know why I'm upset. I'm like, it's because of this. And you're like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, it's just the way I process too, but it's also then what's the best way to move you out of that avoidant mode when you're in that kind of space?
I I think like I'm not really sure because I've never had anyone get me out of it. You know, like I'm not sure. Like I feel like there's a side of me that says I like that I need a tough, like, I know what you're doing. This is bullshit. You're avoiding it.
Yeah.
And because I think like I tend to have like that fighter behavior.
Well, you're safe. You're safe to say "suck it up, Buttercup" to me, because that's my language.
Right, and I think
And-
that's my language as well.
Except it's not.
Well,
When-
no,
when
I think the
say
thing
it-
is like you only need one suck it up buttercup.
but
Like you only need
No, but-
one.
I only need one. I don't believe you only need one.
No, I don't.
I think, but I also think
I can
You
go
need-
10 rounds.
exactly. Whereas I ain't doing that, and that's
But I'm
not
gonna
my.
make you do it anyways
But I
because I'm
think-
still gonna keep going.
But
And
I
I'll
think-
be like, all right, you took a nap. Now it's time to talk about.
Well, I think it goes back to what you were just saying, though, in earlier is I think part of your process is, yeah, you can hear "suck it up, Buttercup," but you also feel like you need to be heard, and you need to be able to express what where you're at and what you're going through at a particular time before necessarily we get to the "suck it up, Buttercup" part of the conversation.
Yeah.
And usually, at least I think you usually come to that place yourself. You're usually like, I just gotta kind of stop this, and then you move forward.
Yeah.
But
Because I think that's the only, because I'm hyper independent and I don't trust people very much. That I've always taken care of myself by myself. Been very good at taking care of other people, but I don't know how to take care of myself. And I used to say I need to get to that bottom. I need to get to that really super dark place and be really upset because I feel like I envision it as like I envision my anxiety and my depression or my feelings of insecurity as like a dark hole, and that I can feel like the weight of the atmosphere kind of coming down on me, all the like as you're like falling down this dark hole. But I also believe that my core positive person is at the bottom of that hole. That it's not until I hit the bottom that I can find her. Like it's like all these layers as I'm going down. It's like listening to every single person that's there that I've like logged into my memory as validating everything that's wrong with me. Like, you can't do anything. You're stupid. You're a piece of crap. You're like every failure under the sun. And it's not until I get down to that safe space at the bottom that my core belief of who I really am, and that's when it's like, if I hit that bottom, all those voices go away and my core person, who I am, is like, shut the fuck up. Like, shut up, Kate. Like, why do you do this stuff? Why do you give yourself all this permission to like beat yourself up, not believe in your dreams, not believe in what you want to do, not believe that you're worthy or good? Like, why are we here?
It's so interesting you say that. Like, it's like like you find yourself, and I don't know if this is a good thing or a healthy thing, but the fact that you expressed it is that you find yourself at the depth, at the bottom, and that the voices go way down there. When I would, in my mind, if I don't feel in the same way you do. My emotional um, vocabulary isn't the same. The depth isn't the same in the same ways. I don't think, but I would think that you know the voices would be dragging me down there, and 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 the and I go, oh no, I'm not. You're not tricking me. It's like the siren, right? Bringing the ships against the rocks. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I'm not going there.
Yeah.
Whereas, and this actually makes a lot of sense because of all the conversations we have. It's like you like to go there so that you can get to the other side, and you've come out of it stronger on the other side so many times, you're maybe even comfortable going down there, whereas I'm not.
Well, I think it's. I had a friend who was in the program, and she talked about like some people have a low bottom, some people have a shallow bottom, and some people hit bottom much faster than other people. And I think for me, I grew up with such a low bottom with so many people that had hit such low bottoms and fluffed it off that I have a very, very deep bottom versus you. Like, I think for you, it's like as soon as you feel that negative feeling, that is when you hear the suck it up buttercup. And like, and I think that's also part of like why I like when we go back and forth and you get frustrated with me or you get like, I can't take it anymore. You'll be like, oh yeah, Kate, sure. You're this, you're that. And as soon as you say that, my defenses come in and I'm like, screw you. Because that's also part of like what drives me is when I was a kid, what drove me was, and I think this was also like not a good thing that, my mom saw this as a part of who I was, is that if somebody said, Kate's never going to learn how to read. And guess what? I'm reading.
Right.
How dare you say I can't do something? And when she saw that with me as a young person, she was willing to tell me all the things that teachers and administrators and principals were saying about me because she saw that it created a drive in me.
Right.
Unfortunately, it also made my bottom lower because it made me higher tolerance to pain. It made me and gave me a higher tolerance to not trusting people or trusting that people saw me or believed in me. And so when I go into a room or I go into a space, I'm already in a defensive mode of that. I have to protect myself. I have to show up perfect. I have to show up like going above and beyond.
Yeah. No, I think, yeah. And I think you do have that competitive side with yourself and others. And that can be a positive thing in a lot of cases and a negative thing. And I think a lot of people though too have those natural defenses that come up with their own vulnerabilities and their own insecurities. It's interesting though that like getting how you get to that other side is getting called out, but also that you getting called out raises your hackles, but then you also recognize, oh, I see where I'm at, I see what I'm doing, why am I doing this?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Mm. Yeah. I like to stay and watch the live stream because people wear
The disposable gloves, plastic gloves, rubber gloves.
on both hands just for me while I hear the live stream.
I like gloves. Hey, everyone. Yeah. Well, and that's something all the couple on retirees were pointing out, like, they developed a thicker skin with some of the comments, and they realized that the negative comments or maybe the weird comments.
Everyone's got their thing. It's okay.
Thing, yeah. It's,
Yeah.
You have your people, and those people will feed into the positive stuff and the supportive stuff, and then the other people, aren't part of your tribe, aren't part of your group.
I think I mean, it is a interesting world being online, just because, one, people see it as like a safe space, and they have anonymity to themselves and a ability to be seen and unseen at the same time, without judgment or without fear. And I think people need to like get into a space where they're comfortable with that. Like there shouldn't be any judgment towards whatever. And for me, I judge myself so much, and not on a daily basis, not on a really harsh basis, but I know that it's just too many people do waste a lot of time on judging themselves. And I know for me, when I go into that kind of like dark space of judgment and anxiety and insecurity, it's all connected to whether or not I think the world values me. Like when I'm down at the depths of my despair, I hit the bottom and I'm there and I kick my own butt and I say, you are valuable, you are talented, you are creative, you are all those things. It's being out in the world and exposing myself again and feeling like it's safe to be open and honest with people.
Yeah. Well, and I think, beyond all of the, the kind of stuff maybe you grew up with and all of that, being someone who's creative and even, with what you do for work, and you're putting yourself out there, and you're helping others put themselves out there, and there is this arc, almost this kind of current where you, like an artist, some artists anyway, is you have kind of those highs and lows where it's like, is this all worth it? Am I making a difference? Who am I? Nobody's paying attention. Is what I'm doing making, all of that stuff. And again, we all feel that. I mean, I feel that sometimes at work, right? I've said, I don't know if I make a difference or not. I mean, I think I do, but I think it's that current of kind of self-doubt, or, what am I doing with my life even? How did I get here? And I think, you know, but I think like you were saying too, is like you are a positive person, you are a supportive person, you are someone who on a day-to-day basis um, is, you know, an inspiration in many ways, you know. And I think it's, you know, in order to get to that other side, you sometimes do have to go to your bottom, you know. But do you, I wonder if you can make it less shallow or less
deep.
deep. You know, I mean, that's above my pay grade, but
I think it is possible to make it, and I feel like I've done that over the years. I have made it more shallow
I think so too.
because I get there faster, or I get there in a way that's like, oh, I recognize like this is what's happening.
And on top of that, um, like what we were talking the other day or yesterday, you know, on top of everything else, you know, when you're going through those moments just normally, you also have, you know, the perimenopause kind of
Rearing
brain.
its lovely head.
Well, yeah, and navigating those kind of feelings and all of that stuff on top of it all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that was always the hardest part for me is um, dealing with the hormonal imbalances, the hormonal ups and downs, and I've seen some articles in regards to like dyslexia and perimenopause, and I think that has always been a really difficult part of my month, is going through kind of that fluctuation, because it does affect how your brain perceives things, understands things. It is really challenging for me to feel clear-headed and not in a brain fog. And being in a brain fog pulls me back into what it felt like to be a little kid trapped in my brain, because that's how I always associated my dyslexia, is literally being trapped in the connection from my brain to my mouth, the connection to reading something on a page, to getting the information in and out in a coherent way.
Yeah.
And, I think for me, being able to raise two kids that also struggled with it made me see what other people didn't see in me. When they were little and they were learning to read, and I would have conversations with the teachers, it goes back to, is reading simply reading words on a page, or is it comprehension? And if reading is about comprehension, they would read a sentence and they would pick a word that they could not get the language through from reading it on the page to their brain out of their mouth, and they would use a word that was a synonym.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, they know what's happening. They know it's not that they can't read. It's they are comprehending everything. And it's not they're comprehending and putting it all together because they saw a picture.
Right.
And
right. That was always the fascinating when they were young, like when they would, we would read to them or we'd have them read to us. And, we'd follow along and see that, oh, they're changing the words around, but they absolutely understand the context and what's going on.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I mean, that was a fascinating piece of it. And now, it makes me so proud to see, where they are,
Right.
but in large part because of your experience going through that as a child, you knew how to advocate for them. You knew how to kind of talk to their teachers and work with them in ways that, maybe someone else who didn't go through that was able to.
Well, I found it really important to like make sure that we're talking to them not in a diminishing way
Right.
of seeking perfection instead of comprehension.
Right.
And if the goal was always to comprehend the text, comprehend it into writing, and then utilize what you learned in real life, that's real world application, versus demoralizing a small child about what their diagnosis was.
Right. Or not getting a word right.
And doing flashcards and sounding out, and that they talk about that, dyslexic kids are much slower readers because they are taught to read every single word versus a natural flowing reader is taught to read from left to right and to scan the words across. And so I learned that much later in life too, of like, just reading about how to become a faster reader.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh wait, I was taught to read every word and sound every word out, and that I was doing that even silently instead of reading across the page, and that your eye actually can pick it up really quickly if you just simply start at the first two words and then go to the next and go to the end of the page, that you're going to pick up.
Yeah, and in some ways, that's what the boys were doing at that young age,
right?
And intuitively for themselves, and it's great. And you see that. I mean, we see them now because they're both into writing stories, and
they're amazing writers.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
But we went over.
We went over.
Yeah, because you were supposed to go to Tangsudo at
That's okay.
6:30.
That's right. I was enjoying this, kind of getting into the flow, even though it was a little vulnerable and tough conversation at some points. But
yeah, no, I feel like
I didn't get into radio voice too much.
No.
And we have somebody that likes gloves.
That's awesome.
Sam Gloves.
Good for you.
I like gloves. Yeah, so maybe live YouTube is our thing.
Yeah. Could be. It could also just be, something to do while we're trying to figure out what to do.
The next one is doing.
But I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
We could like publish it or publicize it as more like, instead of an interactive, as more of like come and eavesdrop.
Yeah. Can we end it?
Yeah, we can end it.
You want to end it for me so I can get up?
You can do it.
Excuse me.